Back to TalkNorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com. We are dissecting the latest Vikings loss, a fairly rare Vikings loss for this season, while I am still in Seattle and John is back in Minneapolis. This is the Viking Update Show with John Krasinski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from the Star Tribune. Brandon Morton is our producer. And please follow us at Talk North Pod. I want to tell you what it's like being in Seattle for a big game, and then we will get to Xavier Rhodes and the Vikings defense. Thank you to our sponsors, Twill in the Edina Galleria, Tony Hoaglund, Hoaglund, your State Farm agent, and BiteSquad.com, promo code TalkNorth. We have really no choice but to get to Xavier, but let me start with this. I'm not a fan. I'm a professional journalist. I don't sit around cheering for people. That kind of gets weaned out of you through decades in the business. You look at people as subjects, storylines, whatever. I will say, I have a real soft spot for Pete Carroll, the way he coaches, Russell Wilson, the way he plays, and Seattle. This atmosphere, it's a great town. It's a great stadium. It's the rare outdoor stadium that they built to capture sound, so it's really loud and rowdy in there. And yet it's not like, say, Philadelphia or New Orleans, where you might get knifed on the way out of the stadium. It's a cool fan base. They love their team, but they're very polite people. They just love the atmosphere. If you ever are going to go to a road Viking game and you can get to Vikings Seattle, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it sure looks like a heck of a lot of fun on TV, and I've never been there, but I do want to get out there because it's not only the Seahawks, but I think the soccer team there has a huge following and a really rowdy following, and it just does look like a fan base that really enjoys itself, that really gets after it and has fun. And they've had some success, certainly with the Super Bowls a few years back, but it has been a city that is not necessarily resting on championships to fuel their sports fandom. It's really just a really great sports town that really gets after. But yeah, like you said, I mean, the team itself is really fun to watch. I mean, Russell Wilson is magic, and it's incredible how he kind of is able to get throws off at these really weird angles. Then you have them faking punts. You have them really being aggressive and kind of trying to attack teams. And I think that is a playing style and an approach and a philosophy that is easy to get behind.
Absolutely. The Vikings were not so much fun to watch, and it was kind of an unusual loss, or maybe, I guess that's what we need to get to here. Was this an unusual loss and an understandable loss because it's hard to win on Monday night in Seattle? It's hard to beat Seattle to begin with. It's hard to win on the road against a good team, all those things. But the disappointing thing, as I wrote about, and as most people wrote about today, is the defense got absolutely shredded. This is supposed to be a defensive-minded team with a defensive-minded head coach. They've invested heavily in their defense and in their secondary, and they got splattered. They got taken apart, and Xavier Rhodes, number one cornerback, paid like a number one cornerback, former number one draft pick, looks like he can't cover anymore. And even though I don't think the 60-yard touchdown was his fault, I do think the way he played it, obviously he was expecting safety help, for him to throw a fit after a mistake by others when he's been making so many mistakes this year. It's a bad look, and it makes you wonder about the emotional health of this team.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to get to, Jim, that's important is, and I wasn't there in the locker room, so I couldn't kind of get to the bottom of it, but what did you find out in talking to people in there about that specific play? Because it looked like, as I was watching on TV, that, okay, Rhodes thought he was going to have safety help and didn't, and got roasted. But then on the sideline, in trying to gauge how he was interacting with his teammates and coaches, not only was he flipping his top, but it looked like he was going from kind of player to player and trying to find someone to say it wasn't his fault, and no one was doing that yet. And it seemed like him being benched, it seemed like Zimmer was kind of saying, well, yeah, no, it was your mistake in that route. I mean, What did we find out about the mechanics of that play and what should have happened? Was it on Rhodes? Was it on someone else?
It was hard to tell. Zimmer said it was a busted coverage. Rhodes would not talk about it. Harris wouldn't talk about it. I asked Harrison Smith to talk about it. He said, I'm not going to get into it. So something went wrong, and I thought it was really interesting that Rhodes kept going back to Anthony Barr. That was the first person he walked up to on the field, and he also walked up to him on the sideline and dismissed him. And it looked like Barr was saying, no, we were doing this, and Rhodes saying, no, I thought we were doing this. So, who regardless of whose fault it was obviously a miscommunication. But that's the problem. He's a veteran cornerback. This is a veteran defense that has been kept together, that has been playing together for years. They can't make that kind of mistake.
You're right, and so the only, if I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, the only thing I wondered is if Harrison Smith kind of was trying to freelance a little bit and got up toward the line of scrimmage and decided to blitz at the last minute on his own. I can't imagine he did that, though. I don't think that that's something that he would do in the heat of the moment that way. And so the way that I was seeing it from afar is it looked like Rhodes misinterpreted something. And so even if he thought it was going to be some way else, that's on him for not recognizing or not hearing or not understanding the play call and how they were going to cover that particular play, and just letting the receiver go and get right behind him for an easy touchdown. And so, but it does get back to that. I mean, this group has been together for a long, long time. They are supposed to kind of know where each other is going to be at all times. And that's clear that they did not do that last night. And so from one aspect, Jim, you can kind of say that, hey, look, you go on the road against one of the best teams in the NFL, really hard place to play. If you lose that game and you lose it by a one score, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's not, you don't have to say the sky is falling because of that. And that's true. But also, I think the way they lost it is concerning. I mean, this team is supposed to be built on its defense, and that defense got absolutely trucked in that game last night. I mean, the 218 yards rushing, they couldn't stop anybody on the ground. They're giving up a few big plays in the passing game. They have the critical mistake. Yeah, they had the defensive touchdown, but there is no possible way that this Vikings team, should expect to put 30 points on the board, combination offense and defense, put 30 points on the board and lose. Like, that's not what this team is built for, and not the way that this team is built to compete in games. And so to give up 37 on the road and to get absolutely manhandled on the line of scrimmage, that's a big concern. And Xavier Rhodes is a huge concern. He has been getting burned and beaten all season long. And if you don't have that lockdown cover corner that he was just a few years ago, that's a huge problem for this defense. Harrison Smith has not made a big play, and I can't remember how long. That's a big problem. Anthony Barr has just been fine. That's a big problem. You're paying these guys to be elite, to be game-changing, dominant players, and they haven't been. And Mike Zimmer had 2 weeks to game plan for this, and he got absolutely out-schemed and out-coached as well. So the way that losing that game is not a huge, huge concern. The way they lost it, I think, does bring in cause for concern about what this defense is and how sustainable kind of this model of winning and roster construction is going forward here.
And I have a couple points I want to make on that topic. We do want to thank Scott Dayton and his shop in the Edina Galleria, Twill, Twill, Twill Edina on Instagram, twillmn.com on internet. Check out Twill in the Edina Galleria. I'm here with my wife, Stacy. We went to Twill in the Edina Galleria the other day. We saw Scott Dayton, and I bought the nicest sport jacket I've ever owned, the most comfortable pants I've ever owned. They're Bracks. A nice pair of loafers that I can wear to the ballpark. I think they're called Tracks. And I bought a bunch of Stenstrom short sleeve shirts to go with my Stenstrom nice dress shirts. And, I used to wear just disposable clothes. Now when I buy something, I buy it at Twill. I know it's going to last me the rest of my life, and it's going to be comfortable.
And on top of that, it's not just the best stuff you've ever had, but it's really everyday things that you can wear and that will fit all occasions.
Twill in the Edina Galleria, twillmn.com, Twill on Instagram. And I was talking about this with our beat writers last night, and, again, this is a team that built defense first, that hired an esteemed defensive coordinator, and their performances in some big games the last few years have been very concerning. This was a big game. They gave up 37 points, as you said, after 2 weeks of preparation against a team that really isn't built to score 37 points. Last year, they needed to beat the Bears to get to the playoffs. They got shredded by an offense that we're not very impressed with right now. Year before, they have the 13-win season. They take a big lead over the Saints at halftime, and then their defense got torched in the second half. Then they go to Philly and get torched by Nick Foles, who we're not real impressed with right now. It's been a bad run here. They went 2-3 last year in December when they had a chance to make the playoffs. It's a little concerning, and more than just the results. If you want to eyeball it, what I see is something you alluded to, which is you wonder if Zimmer wears down his team during the course of a season, or you wonder if all these defensive players who have been playing at a high level for a long time are worn down because of the passage of time. Harrison Smith just doesn't look as dynamic as he once did. Barr doesn't look as dynamic as he once did. Linval Joseph's coming off credit to Linval Joseph for rushing back to play on a bad knee, but he couldn't do what he usually does last night. Xavier Rhodes looks like a shell of his former self. It doesn't look like the same defense that we got excited about a couple years ago.
Yeah, it doesn't. And, I think, there a lot of the discourse on SportsCenter and, during the just frankly trash an analysis in game on Monday Night Football from McFarland and Tessitore, like
They're really bad.
It was all, looked at Kirk Cousins and examine that part of it. And McFarland was saying, hey, look, Kirk Cousins did fine and was doing fine, but there was not nearly enough attention paid to this defense. And look, right now, I think what you can say definitively about this defense in a positive way, I think Danielle Hunter is dynamic.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, he's great.
I think Eric Kendricks is pretty dynamic and playing really well. Other than that, Everson Griffin has had his spots. But other than that, that's it. And I think Rhodes, whether he's getting too old, I don't know, but he seems to have lost it. Harrison Smith seems a step slow. Barr it doesn't show up enough. All of these guys I think they are getting older, and whether it is because of age, whether it's because of injuries, whether it's because of any number of things, they are not dynamic right now, and they need to be dynamic. This is what Mike Zimmer wanted, was an offense that ran the ball and didn't make mistakes and let the defense really kind of control games. They are not controlling games in the biggest spots against the best teams. I mean, even at Green Bay, you give up 21 points right away. Now, granted, they played really well over the last 3 quarters of that game, but when you get down and you dig yourself a hole that big, it changes the entire complexion of the game and makes it so much easier for the Packers to play from out in front. So it's just been a very rare occasion where big game against a quality opponent that is going to be a slugfest, and this defense shows up really well. I mean, it just doesn't happen that much. I mean, they played fairly well in Dallas, but Dallas is overrated. So we're still waiting for that, and it has been a long time since we've seen them really come out and grab an opponent by the throat and just squeeze the life out of them, and a good opponent, I should say. And it just, I don't know. I don't know if the window is closing on this defense or if different things need to be done, but something has to happen to change that, or else this model and the way that this team is constructed to lean on that defense and rely on it to get it through to close, tight games is not going to work.
No, absolutely. And again, I do hear from people who know the team very well that maybe Zimmer is pushing guys too hard. Maybe wearing people down. And I just think, when Zimmer first took over, I gave him credit because I thought he tried to embrace some new age philosophies. He tried to practice at different times of the day, try to get people rest. I think, when the pressure is on, he goes back to old school Mike. Hey, we're gonna slug it out in practice.